2023. Wow, what a year for animation. Honestly, I haven't seen a year like this. This year had animated movies that have gone down as some people's favorite movies of all time. It had banger after banger, and honestly, well, there were some cracks in between. We had some films that weren't that great, but majority were really good. We had obviously Spiderverse, we had TMNT, we had like one of the highest grossing animated movies of all time this year, being the Super Mario Bros. Movie. Like, animation was killing it this year. Although there were some movies that didn't do so well, there were reasons for that. But I'd say 2023 was a really good year. Out of all the years in the 2020s, 2023 has been the best year for animation. And today is that day to rank all of them. The ones that I've seen, of course. Before I even rank anything, I just want to say The Boy and the Heron and is not in this list. I'm so sorry. I'm going to get around to watching that. And hey, if here's a little promotion, I have a letterbox now, so if you want to go check that out, you can. But I will get to that review eventually. But 2023 was a long year for animation. There were so many movies that came out, and it's a good way to end the year, just ranking all these movies. And yes, my opinions may be different from yours, and honestly, I'd really like to hear what you guys have to say in the comments. So, alright, let's get into it. Of my ranking of all the 2023 animated movies that I've seen. We're starting from the bottom, and while Netflix was certainly a contender in the animation space this year, Netflix for their animation has been, well, they promote it horribly, but we may see some gems out of there maybe every so often. But this year, we had a pretty decent amount of good movies from Netflix, but there was one movie in particular that came out over this summer that I really want that hour and a half back, and I know I'm never gonna get it back. And that movie is The Monkey King. If you haven't heard about this movie, good. And maybe Netflix wanted to do that for a reason. I heard about this movie a month in advance before it even came out. Typical Netflix. Their promotion is phenomenal. You'll love to see it. And you know what? From, promotional art and just the trailer, it looked decent. The animation looked fine, and from what I've been hearing from, the studio, they said this was a mix of, their own property, Monkey King, mixed with Kung Fu Panda. I mean, I love Kung Fu Panda. And honestly, I had no idea the Monkey King was like a, not really here in America, but a big established franchise in China. They have a lot of live action movies, and now that I'm looking at it, maybe animation was just the right way to go in the first place, because I don't know what I'm looking at here. But the only really version I've heard praise about is Lego Monkey Kid, which I still have to get around to watching that show. Please make that more accessible for all of us. I know it's somewhere on Prime Video, I just have to get around to watching it, but the animation looks stellar on that. But we're talking about the Netflix version of this movie, and, it's really bad. And what I have to say is, never compare peak to whatever the hell this movie was. This movie was so bad. Like, I cannot, First of all, this might be the worst main protagonist I've ever seen in an animated movie. There was no redeemable qualities about him. He was just annoying beginning to end. He just had this cocky nature to himself. And, just downplayed all the other characters. Speaking of the other characters, they were not interesting at all. Honestly, some of the dialogue was kind of painful to listen to, because I was trying to figure out who the hell wrote this. And the villain of the movie was also not good. Not good at all, not intimidating, not nothing. And the climax battle was a battle, that's all I could really say. And honestly, the only good thing about this movie was the little montage in the middle of the movie before everything kicked off. And I feel like that's the only thing reminiscent of Kung Fu Panda. And while that montage was pretty cool, the animation looked really nice in that. After that, the movie was, it was done. I was so glad the movie was over. I am never revisiting that movie ever again. I know Just stay away from that movie. Out of all the catalogs of Netflix animated movies, just stay away from it. It's gonna be a waste of your time. Just stay away from it for your own good. This movie's going out at the bottom. In fact, it's going in the garbage can. It's just that bad. We're moving on. Next. Next on the list is a movie called Mummies. Chances are you've probably never heard of this movie, unless you saw Saber Sparks' video. Anywhere else, probably haven't heard about this movie. And this is a movie that is distributed by Warner Brothers, but technically isn't a Warner Brothers movie. It is, but it isn't. This is made by a studio all the way in Spain. And honestly, talking about forgettable, Warner Brothers animation in the 3D space just disappeared after the LEGO movies. After the LEGO Movie 2, the second part, there has not been a single memorable Warner Brothers movie that has come out in the animation space, and it's kinda sad, cause, yes, the LEGO movies were peak, but now that they're gone, they just can't seem to find footing on an original property, so they either just go to properties that Warner Brothers owns, like DC. DC League of Super Pets was okay, but, it's not really that memorable. And now we have Mummies, an original that is not original, honestly. This is a movie that, as soon as I saw the trailer, I knew what it was, I knew what it was going for. I basically saw the whole movie without even, it only took like a minute into the trailer. And unfortunately, it's a concept that's been done to death. And honestly, just the whole concept of mummies in animation has been done. It's been done live action. So it doesn't really bring anything new to the table. And after watching it, yeah, it doesn't. While I could say it's a good concept for having the whole mummy world of the dead being underground in the earth, that's pretty cool. It would be cool to see if they came up into modern day Egypt, but they didn't. They went to London, which is confusing, and the whole cast is also British. It's confusing, but regarding the movie itself, if the plot doesn't bore you, the characters will. It's a very boring movie. It doesn't have unlikable protagonists, but they're just bland as sandpaper. It's a movie that, it's trying to go for something. It doesn't know what it wants to be. It just wants to be a movie that your aunt is gonna go get at the store, get a DVD, and just get it for their little kid. I mean, I don't even know if people buy DVDs anymore. It's a movie that their aunt will put on if it was on Netflix or something, and the kid will just watch it. I had a lot of those movies as a kid, and it's just a movie. The villain is also very forgettable. The characters, I don't even remember most of their names. All I know is King Tut is in the movie. No brainer for a mummy movie. But it's, like I said, if the plot doesn't bore you, the characters will. It's not going in the trash. It's about to be put into the bin if I watch it one more time. Moving on. Next up on the list is PAW Patrol the Mighty Movie. Okay, knowing this, as soon as I saw the trailer for this movie, I was just, I'm eventually gonna have to review this. And hearing that it came out on the same day as Saw X, which is actually pretty funny because I saw both, but the movie itself is just fine. The first movie that released in 2021 was also fine. It was a harmless movie, and the second movie is pretty much more of the same. The movie is harmless, the plot is just cookie cutter, and, like I said, it's a PAW Patrol movie. And what makes this better than the other two movies that I just listed is that the plot is actually watchable and I could be entertained. Not in terms of jokes, but I could say that just the movie itself is fine. It's an entertaining movie. It's really nothing that great. It's not my cup of tea, but I'd say there's some enjoyable moments. The plot is fine, focusing on Sky is decent for a change, and it's just a fine movie. It's just, if you wanna watch it, go ahead. I wouldn't stop you. The movie is just fine. It's really short. It's nothing crazy. It's just a decent movie. Alright, moving on again. Miraculous Ladybug and Cat Noir the movie. Now, this movie I heard about a pretty long time ago, at least they actually acknowledged the movie was happening. This is a pretty popular Disney Channel show. It has a very big fan base behind it, and some for good reasons, some for bad reasons. And the show itself is just not my cup of tea. The animation is not good. And from what I've heard, the story is very long, and also I just heard they completed the first arc of the show at like season 7, I think? Which is insane! God! And, well, hearing about this movie being an origin story, okay, this is something I can walk into, not having to know anything about the previous episodes of the franchise, and, just enjoy it for what it is. And I could say the animation compared to the show is a massive upgrade. The animation looks really good for what it is compared to the original show, and I could tell they put their heart and soul into this. Regarding the movie itself, it's good. It's not insane. One thing, a lot of these movies on this list, I also want to point out, a lot of them end up being musicals, and it's weird. A lot of these end up musicals, and this is one of them. And the weird part about this is that the main protagonist seems to have both two voice actors, one when they're singing and one when they're actually having dialogue, and it wasn't hard to notice that. But I'd say the plot itself is decent. It's a Miraculous Ladybug movie after all. But I'd say the climax is pretty disappointing. With a movie like this, especially being a superhero story, the climax was pretty underwhelming. It wasn't that great. Although at the end with Cat Noir and his father, that was pretty nice. But altogether, it's a movie. It's not my cup of tea with the franchise, but it's alright. It is what it is. But I know there are people that really like this movie, and if you do, kudos to you. Just not my cup of tea. Moving on. Next up on the list is Disney's Wish. Now, I've talked about this movie quite a lot, and I'm pretty sure you guys know my perspective on this film. This is probably the most disappointing film of the year, for me at least. I had hopes for this film. Disney has been on a trajectory that the only good film they've had this decade is Encanto. For the Disney animation side, Pixar has been doing okay. They've had some good films here and there. But Disney's Wish was just really disappointing, man. Like, first, the animation itself, it could have been better, especially knowing that the movie was originally gonna be 2D. This is a movie celebrating Disney's 100th anniversary. This is supposed to be a film that everyone should, like. And that's not how it turned out. And one of the worst parts about it is that the film had really, really forgettable songs. This is the film. This is the film that goes back to the Disney roots. And we just don't get that here. Especially the villain song from Magnifico, or whatever his name is. His song was the most disappointing. Oh my god. They were hyping him up so much of having an amazing villain song, and it just fell flat, man. And, it's just a film that I don't see myself maybe revisiting, maybe once, just to see my thoughts on the movie again. But it's a movie that goes back to Disney's roots. Yeah, cool, but doesn't add anything new to the table, which leaves it just bland and forgettable. And it's really sad that this movie could have been so much better. It has some good qualities to it, but it gets overshadowed by so many disappointing factors for this to be the Disney 100th anniversary movie. But anyways, moving on. Next up on the list is a movie that there's a really, really good chance you've never heard of, but in October there was an animated movie that came out towards the tail end of the month, and the movie was Under the Boardwalk. This is a movie that I heard about over the summer, and originally, this movie was supposed to release in May of 2024. In theaters, mind you. And then suddenly, the movie just decided to come out in October, in theaters, mind you, but for one day on October 27th. That movie was sent to die. And, if you know what movie they released on that day, being the FNAF movie, the movie had no chance. They didn't even put up the box office numbers because it was just that bad. And this is just weird. Paramount Animation has made original films that, are hit or miss. But this was really thrown in the garbage can. I don't know what's happening to original animation. It's just being treated so badly. And putting this movie leaving it to die was just so messed up. But I watched it, and it's an interesting concept. I've never seen an animated movie take the concept of, first of all, a boardwalk, and also just crabs. It's an interesting concept. So you know what? What the heck? I'll watch the movie. And after watching it, it's not that bad, and it's one of the better original movies from Paramount. Original animated movies, at least. And one thing I say that will get the minor thing off their wish is that some of the songs are actually pretty good compared to what Wish had. I know, you're just gonna have to watch the movie for yourself. It's a simple plot, but for what the movie is, it's kinda has a mini Romeo and Juliet story. There's two different, crab size, one that's on land, one that's underwater, and they have this feud. It's a whole thing, but I enjoyed the movie. It's simple. It's a crab movie, but it was a fun movie for me. I think it gets the edge just a little bit. It's simple, but I'd actually recommend watching it. Next.
Has a beak, that's our favorite cephalopod, that's our octopus.
Next up is Rubygillman Teenage Kraken. Now, DreamWorks has had an interesting trajectory after Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. Well, obviously, this is an original. A lot of people were hyping this movie up and then just, didn't see it. The movie didn't do too hot at the box office, only bringing in $40 million, which is a real low for DreamWorks, and they kind of just scrubbed it under the rugs and never talked about it ever again. But Rubygillman Teenage Kraken, just watching it, regardless of hearing reviews or anything, it's a predictable plot, and in some ways, the trailers kinda did the movie dirty. I had fun with the movie, regardless. Yes, the movie has fun characters, they're actually memorable, but I'd say that I think the real reason for why people were hyping up this movie is just because the movie had similarities to The Little Mermaid, and everyone was like, oh my god, DreamWorks and Disney are fighting again, and it was just kind of stupid. Everyone that watched The Little Mermaid went to go watch The Little Mermaid, and that one small percent of people that wanted to watch Rubygillman Teenage Kraken, because there wasn't many people in my theater when I watched it, went to go see Rubygillman Teenage Kraken. But the movie itself it's a simple movie. I'd say it has some good qualities to it. I'd say the soundtrack kind of does go good with this movie. But altogether, it's a good DreamWorks movie. It's not terrible. Trust me, we have gotten way worse. But this is just a fine movie. Kind of predictable. The trailers kind of didn't do the movie justice. It's not the greatest DreamWorks movie of all time. But it's okay. Moving on. Next on the list is Netflix's Leo. Now, this movie has been in talks these past 2 months for a lot. A lot of people were saying it was really good. And if you told me if I was excited for an Adam Sandler lizard movie, I'd be lying to you. The trailers looked okay, it just looked, eh. But when I watched the movie, oh my god, I was actually laughing my ass off with this movie. It actually is pretty good. Like, I will not hold you. This is probably one of Netflix's best films, well, animated films to come out this year. It's not number one, you'll see who number one is soon, but it's one of them. And honestly, I really did have a lot of fun with this movie. The plot is just Leo, getting to know some kids, helping them with their problems. It's simple. I actually got to hear Adam Sandler as a lizard sing. That was something. There are a lot of fun references. I will say that the only thing was that the third act felt a little off and a little weird. It kind of was like it didn't know what to do, and it just went with something, and then just not fall flat, but it just picked itself up just when we were about to get lost. And that's really my only complaint about the movie. Leo is actually pretty good. Go watch it.
I'm not! Why won't you sing?
Because singing killed my grandma, okay?
Next on the list is Trolls Band Together. Now, this is a movie that, honestly, I wasn't really hyped for. My experience with the Trolls franchise is the first movie was okay, the second one I really didn't like, and this one I wasn't really much expecting from. It had a generic plot of, oh, they have a sibling now, and it's kind of like that, and the trailers did give away quite a lot from it. But, watching the movie, I wasn't expecting myself to laugh at some of these jokes. And there was a lot of jokes in this movie that were pretty adult. And I was wondering why this was the case for a Trolls sequel. And I figured out that the director changed for this movie, and they had worked on Shrek 2 and a lot of great DreamWorks movies. And then I was like, okay, I see it now. This was pretty good. The Trolls movies are okay, but I'd say this one is probably the best out of the trilogy. Velvet and Veneer absolutely steal the show with this movie. They were just so fun to watch. I was not expecting for me to like these characters. They had kind of interesting designs. I honestly thought the whole world was just trolls. No, it's not. But it's a fun movie. I'd say some of the songs are okay. I'd say that just Trolls Band Together, it balanced itself alright. The pacing was surprisingly good for not a short movie, but a movie that felt longer than it actually was. I'd say Trolls Band Together is it's fun. If you're not a Trolls fan, you'll get some enjoyment out of this movie. I never thought I'd say that, but here we are. Trolls Band Together is a decent movie. Moving on. Next up on the list is Chicken Run Dawn of the Nugget. Now, the original Chicken Run I watched a very long time ago, so I had to rewatch the movie just to, have my memory up to speed on, what happened in this movie. And on top of that, if you didn't already know, DreamWorks didn't work on this movie, because a lot of people were telling me DreamWorks made Chicken Run Dawn of the Nugget. This counts as a DreamWorks movie that came out this year. No. DreamWorks and the company behind Chicken Run had split their ways all the way back in 2011, 2010, I don't remember the year, someone can put it down in the comments. Yeah, they split away, and this one was just with Netflix, and sadly, they are also running out of clay to make these movies, and it's kind of sad that we may soon not see a Chicken Run 3, or anything that also just comes from this company. But Chicken Run Dawn of the Nugget doesn't fall under the sequel curse. This movie was actually pretty good. Instead of leaving a chicken farm, they're breaking into one. That's a pretty simple but fun plot for a franchise like this. And, okay, I don't know if it's just me, but recently I've seen Bella Ramsey, everywhere. I'm seeing her in The Last of Us. I'm seeing her in Hilda. Go watch season 3. It's actually really good. Just watch Hilda in general. It's just a comfort show. And I'm seeing her in this. And nope, she's a fun character in this movie. And I'd say that everyone just feels the same. It doesn't lose the magic of the first movie. You obviously have the villain return. That's also fun to see, and they add some new stuff to it. It's just a fun sequel. It doesn't ruin anything from the original. It's, I'd say, pretty much just as good, in my opinion. So Chicken Run Down the Nugget, Dawn of the Nugget, I'd give a watch. Moving on. Next up on the list is Illumination's Migration, which just released about a week ago from me releasing this video. I think if it's releasing today. Yeah, not a week from today, but just last week. Migration is a fun movie, and I'd say it's one of Illumination's better originals. A lot of people were wondering if this movie's gonna do pretty bad, and unfortunately, it had the lowest opening weekend for an Illumination movie. I was kinda rooting for this movie, and unfortunately it didn't play out. Hopefully, it was just because it's the Christmas weekend. Not everyone's trying to go see a movie right now. Everyone's trying to get to their families in the chaos that is Christmas. And maybe it'll pick itself up. Maybe in January, maybe, hopefully. Because it's not looking too good. The movie itself is okay, but it's a fun movie. I'd say I had more fun with it than I did with like The Secret Life of Pets. That just felt like clustered. It didn't feel like an ad for something, and you know what? I know I won't get a sequel, obviously, but it's one of Illumination's better originals. Next up on the list is Pixar's Elemental. Now, this is a film that, out of all the movies that were coming out in June, I heard this was the least talked about movie coming out that month, and honestly, I was kind of one of those people. It just looked okay. The marketing for this movie, though, was abysmal. It existed, but it was really bad. The movie just looked simple. It just, okay, it was one of Pixar's more generic plots, and it looked like it was just taken away from Zootopia and just added elements to it. But on watching it the day it came out, wow, I was so wrong. This movie I really liked, actually. This goes up in probably the top 10 for my favorite DreamWorks movies. I wasn't expecting it to be a love story because it wasn't really written all over the trailers, and maybe that was a good thing they didn't show everything. The movie was simply just a rom-com, which when do you get a rom-com in animation these days? And I think that was really good. Wade and Ember's relationship was fun to watch. Their chemistry, no pun intended, was fun to watch. And I'd say that I think they balanced, and the story behind it is really, really nice, with the director being an immigrant from Korea coming into New York, and, you know, the symbolism behind that, and interrelational relationships. It's a fun movie. It actually feels like a Pixar movie. Looking at you, Lightyear. And I think that's the feel I've needed from Pixar in a while. And thankfully, this movie delivered on that. I really liked it. It is on Disney+. I really highly recommend it. And Steal the Show is just a peak song. Just peak. I was listening to it so many times after the movie released. So, I'd give Elemental a watch. Next up is Netflix's Nimona. Like I said, Netflix had some bangers this year, and this was the best one. Nimona was a film that I knew about for a while, in the works with Blue Sky, and this was originally supposed to be a movie with Disney. And when we heard that Blue Sky had been shut down, this was one of the movies that was canceled. And at first I didn't know why, but after watching the movie and knowing why, this movie is amazing. I'm just really disappointed at Disney for this. This is a movie that was supposed to be in theaters. A lot of people needed to see this movie. It was very, very good. And I hadn't previously watched any videos regarding Nimona. I just wanted to go in like anything about the book series. I didn't even read any of the comics. I just wanted to go in blindly for this movie. And wow, this movie was really good. Nimona is just such a fun and energetic character, and Ballister is just the perfect duo for Nimona. They just have such a fun dynamic. I would say the villain is kinda whatever, but I'd say the whole film itself, I've watched this movie so many times when I've gotten bored. It's just a really fun movie. The animation looks really good. I love we're getting these stylized animated movies. I'm just the fact this didn't release in theaters just makes me mad, because this movie would be so good. It is so good, and at least for Netflix, a lot of people would see it, and it was in the top 10 for a while, and I know a lot of people really love this movie. So, Nimona is a must-watch. Next up on the list, entering the top 3, is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem. Now, hearing about this movie all the way back in 2022, I was very hyped for this movie. Finally, an animated TMNT movie that we haven't gotten since 2007. Now that movie was, well, the animation just looked It was 2007, I was able to let it slide. But now that we're in this new era of animation where it could be stylized, it could be 3D, it could be 2D, anything is possible. And when I saw the first teaser for it, I was like, oh yeah, we are in for something really good. And Seth Rogen had cooked on this movie. It was very, very good. It's like a comforting feeling with this movie. It actually it made jokes that actually landed, that movies that try and do modern jokes, it ends up being cringy and, weighs the movie down. This time around, it doesn't, and it only adds because, yeah, they're teenagers, and not only that, the voice actors are also teenagers. So it just adds to it, and the movie itself just had fun animations. All the characters were really good. Superfly was a great villain. And also, I cannot wait to see Shredder in the sequel. It was a really fun time. A lot of the jokes were really good. My theater had a great time with the movie. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is also just a must-watch for everyone. Yep, you know exactly what it is. Nintendo and Illumination's The Super Mario Bros. Movie. This movie, I was cautious, but also very hyped for. I am a huge Mario fan, and also, both this movie and TMNT Mutant Mayhem are basically on the same level. It's just a ranking, I just had to, yeah. First, hearing it was from Illumination was a little worrisome, because it's Illumination. Then the cast came out, and that just broke the internet for like a day or two. And then when the trailer released, the animation looked gorgeous. Chris Pratt as Mario was a little but everyone else was just amazing. And when the movie finally released, I'll be real with you, that was actually one of the best theater experiences I've had. The Super Mario Bros. Movie is just everything you want from a Mario movie. I'd say the only thing missing from this movie is Mario and Luigi having a lot of screen time together. Besides that, this movie is just great, and there are so many scenes, so many references listed in this movie that I could go on forever about. And Bowser killed it in this movie. Peaches it almost became an Oscar-nominated song. It was just that good. And just everything about it. I always watch this movie. If you're a Mario fan, I don't know how you haven't watched this movie yet, but go watch it, please. And if you're not, I'd still say the Mario movie is a must-watch, even if you're not a Mario fan. You're gonna have fun with this. And now we've reached our final film. And who could have guessed Spider-Man Across the Spiderverse? This movie, ever since the first Spiderverse film, this has been one of my most anticipated animated movies to release, and it delivered everything. The feeling once this movie started and the feeling once this movie ended were two different feelings I wasn't expecting just from a movie like this. And the movie is just amazing. The animation is stellar. it's on the same level as the first movie, but just takes it up to 11. It is phenomenal. And the characters are all just amazing. The reason why this franchise is just so great, everyone connects to at least one of these characters. And the soundtrack is so just as crisp as the first movie. And at this rate, if once Beyond the Spider-Verse release and it's just as good, this is gonna go down as one of the best trilogies of all time. Even Star Wars might not be able to touch Spider-Verse as a trilogy. Oscar Isaac as Miguel O'Hara killed it. Spider-Man 2099 is definitely gonna be a household name at this point. Also, his theme has just been engraved in everyone's minds now. Spider-Man and Gwen's storyline was good for what it was, but I can tell it's going to increase in Beyond the Spider-Verse. The Spot was just such a funny and fun villain. I've never heard of him before, most people didn't, but I love him so much after this. The Spot is just a great villain, and he turned into a total badass at the end, and I cannot wait to see him in Beyond the Spider-Verse. The cliffhanger ending, I knew it was going to happen because they did kind of say it was going to have... They did say Part 1 and Part 2 originally, now it's Across the Spider-Verse, now it's Beyond the Spider-Verse. They probably shouldn't have done that because now we knew it was going to be a cliffhanger ending, but the feeling when I walked out of that theater after that was just... The music added to it too. There were some people that were surprised, some weren't, but... Whew, the chills after that was just amazing. Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse is a must watch. It is on Netflix. Please go watch it. It is just that good. And that's it. That is my ranking of all the animated movies that have come out in 2023, that I've watched, of course. The Boy and the Heron, I will watch eventually, and I'll throw that review onto Letterboxd. So go check out my Letterboxd. And that's a recap for the entire year. Just taking a step back for a little bit. The channel has had a monumentous achievement this year. We went from 1,000 subscribers at the beginning of the year all the way to 21,000. That is absolutely insane. And only one day away from me posting that Puss in Boots video about 2022 being amazing for DreamWorks, and that's what started it all. I really honestly can't thank you guys enough for how much the channel grew this year and the amazing people I met this year through these videos, and I really can't thank you guys enough. And 2024 is looking like a great year for animation as well, so stay tuned. I'm so excited, and thank you guys so much. This will be the last video for the year. Happy New Year's, guys, and thanks for everything.